Thank you so much, Vince, for that very kind introduction. And because you've already told people I'm British, I don't have to disabuse them, because apparently there's another Dr. Phil here in the United States, which I did not know about when I was coming here. Turns out there's much for me to learn. But I'm delighted to be here. I was indeed a British diplomat. My patch was only New England, so it is only now that I finally get to come to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I'm delighted to be here. I've had a whole bunch of Kentuckian friends and staff over the years, and I've got to know your REAP team, so it is an honor to be here. I'm with you all day. I have two tasks. First of all, this morning, I'm going to very quickly introduce you to what is this REAP thing anyway, just so you have some background. I'm going to give you a quick overview, no more than 10 minutes. And then I'm going to be here listening all day with great pride to what your REAP team has done through this REAP program, so that I can report back to my fellow professors back up at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But also then I get to make closing remarks, and they'll be very brief because I'll be standing between you and a reception. But I do want to just come back at the end of the day just to pick up on the things I've heard, the journey that you're on, and just to capture some of the action points that I think are going to come out of this, because we at MIT are all in favor of action. If you just wanted to sort of think thoughts, you could always work with our partner institution up the river, Harvard. But we at MIT, we're simple folk. We're a bit blue collar. We like to actually have good ideas and then actually take them through to some sort of impact. All right, so that's my mission. And yes, I'm really sorry about the weather. I brought the British weather with me, but hopefully this won't last. So what is this REAP thing anyway? That's our fancy logo. We are set up by faculty, but we have a great bunch of staff who supports us. We are a small team, but we are running a global program. The two professors in the top right, Professor Scott Stern and Professor Fiona Murray, are the two key founders. Professor of the practice Bill Olet is an entrepreneur. I'm the diplomat. Shari Losberg is our faculty on risk capital. And then Michael Cusimano is our faculty on corporate innovation, and it's great to get to work with him. All right, this is the MIT REAP journey. This is the journey that we put your REAP team from Kentucky through. Everybody has to do it. 2 whole years. There's a lot of preparation work at the very beginning, action phase 0. And then we have 4 key workshops. I remember sitting in Leeds, North England, with weather rather like this outside, so thank you for repeating that, with your REAP team. And it was so great to have them with the other 7 teams from around the world that were in their cohort. We were doing this in January 2020. As you can imagine, from March 2020, things got a little hairy as we all faced a COVID pandemic. And we are just so proud of that whole cohort, but especially REAP Team Kentucky, for sticking with it, finishing the program, and now that we're honored as we start to come out of the lockdowns. I'm not sure we're done with COVID. It's certainly not done with us. But as we start to come out of the lockdowns, I'm really excited that you're holding this event today, because this really is delivering on the promise. We are thrilled to work with the teams through their 2 years, but it was clear that the team from Kentucky had been working on these ideas for years and years, and we're just sort of an accelerant in that. And it's an honor to be here today to see what they're doing going forwards and to offer continuing partnership from us at MIT. All right, as I say, 60 regions around the world. Kentucky was the first US state to go through MIT REAP. So can you all join me in a round of applause to the team in Kentucky? I was especially pleased. I'm surrounded by people of the Northeast up there in Boston, but having had various Kentuckians, including a couple of young interns who, to the first offsite, they brought a bottle of something called Maker's Mark, which got us stiff Brits bonding much more on our overnight offsite. And so I've always had a special place in my heart for Kentucky. In fact, tomorrow I will be making a pilgrimage to Maker's Mark on my way to Lexington. But as you can see, we have teams from around the world. And the great thing about your REAP team from Kentucky is it has put Kentucky on the map, literally. It has brought Kentucky to our bit of the world, but also to all those other teams. This is an interactive map, so you can just click on any of those pins, and you can see teams from around the world. We, inspired by Kentucky, we have a small city on the West Coast called Los Angeles, has now joined us. They face huge challenges as well. And the great thing is, we will be able to teach the teams that are coming in now about the efforts, the lessons, and the successes of REAP Team Kentucky. So you've brought Kentucky to the world, and now the world is interested in Kentucky and wants to know how you did what you did. One of the key concepts, and in case this comes up today, I just want to share this very briefly. Bill Olet and Fiona Murray separated out two types of small business, and they wrote this about 9 years ago. First of all, we have lots of small and medium-sized enterprises. They are hugely important. They are the backbone of our economies. We are interested in those innovation-driven enterprises where actually, the slide's gone a little squiggly, it's supposed to go below the waterline. These are the kinds of small businesses that actually aren't going to make money for a while because they're being invested in. They're doing something really hard like CubeSats or some fancy artificial intelligence or some new manufacturing process. But when they come out of that early phase, the valley of death, they have a huge impact. And as professors much smarter than me have told me, it's a handful of those in regional ecosystems that make the difference. You know, having nice restaurants, small SMEs, and we were at a lovely one last night, Hickory and Oak, I believe it was. Having those great restaurants is really important, but the game changers for your regional economy are those high-end, innovation-driven enterprises, which aren't just doing something locally, but are actually planning to do something nationally and potentially globally. So you can hear a bit about those IDEs. And then here's our theory of change, which I love. This is boiled down from many, many books that the professors have written, and we've turned it into the 3 S's, which is good for me because I used to work for government. I was a diplomat. I need it really simple. 3 S's: stakeholders, system, and then strategy. So in the stakeholders, we see 5 key stakeholders in regional innovation ecosystems around the world. The usual big 3: big university, big government, big corporations. You need that triple helix, but it's no longer enough. Also at the table, you really need to have the entrepreneurs and the risk capital providers who support them through that valley of death. The challenge with entrepreneurship is nobody's in charge. We put the entrepreneur at the head of the table because they're sensitive. It's important to put them at the head of the table and make them feel important. But I, as the diplomat, can tell you every one of those stakeholders has a role to play, and they need to look beyond their narrow self-interest to the system of to the interests of the ecosystem, the interests of their region. And the places that are going to do well in the innovation economy are the ones where those 5 stakeholders come together and aren't just thinking about, publish or perish for tenure. They aren't just thinking about the quarterly results or the next funding round. They're actually thinking about their region, their ecosystem. And so here, taken from the website, is some familiar faces who are on the Kentucky page of our REAP website, the people who actually brought together, because Team Kentucky had to have a representative of all 5 stakeholders. Like every team, they evolve over time, but it's having those stakeholders at the same table that has made a real difference. And your Team Kentucky has done this Commonwealth proud. But as we tell them at the end of the 2 years, it's like, okay, that was intense. At MIT, we talk about drinking from a fire hose in terms of our education. We really gave them a lot of information. But that's just the 2 years. Now the hard work starts. You need to get beyond those 5 people at the table to spread out to all those other tables. And today's event is a delivery on that promise. By them inviting you, and more importantly, you accepting that invitation and turning up here today, despite the British weather, is part of the promise of going forwards. That's what gives us great hope about Kentucky and what it can do for its regional innovation ecosystem, because people are turning out to make a difference. The second S is system. Tom Friedman, a long time ago, wrote a book called The World is Flat, Everything Could Happen Anywhere. Turns out he was wrong. In terms of innovation, high-end innovation, the world is not flat. Innovation, particularly high-end tech innovation that creates jobs and equitable outcomes and environmental progress, that is not equitably distributed across the planet. And I say that with some sadness. So we've spent the last 20 years trying to understand, why does it happen in some places and not others? I meet entrepreneurs from around the world. The entrepreneurs I work with in Ghana are no less entrepreneurial than the ones I meet in Silicon Valley. What is different? Well, it is the ecosystem. It's the system around them. So the professors, again, we've boiled this down to this simple graphic here, and I'm sure members of REAP Team Kentucky are getting flashbacks because they had to do a lot of homework around this. But this is the system, and it's about the key thing is bringing innovation and entrepreneurship together. Just because you're good at science and just because you're good at small businesses doesn't mean you're going to have a transformative economy. It's about bringing the two together and then being really hard-headed about your comparative advantage. What makes you different? What are your strengths? How are you going to stand out in the national economy, in the global innovation economy, and how are you going to get known? As I say, 2 capacities, ICAP and ECAP. We had a great team from Tokyo, Japan, full of great innovation, low entrepreneurship. Great team from Ghana, highly entrepreneurial. Not everything they were doing was technically legal. You know, we don't condone that, but they were not tying it with high-end R&D. And that's why you need to bring the two together. And that's why I'm so excited that after today's event, we're going to be over at Buddy's Center. Buddy, thank you yesterday for the guided tour. You need spaces where you can bring together the high-end innovation, science, technology, R&D, with those who are going to be high-end entrepreneurs, because that's what makes a difference in a region. Last but not least, the third S, strategy. We're not management consultants. We can't tell you the story in advance. Every single region will have a different strategy depending on the stakeholders who turn up and depending on the analysis of its system. And so your REAP team has been through this process, and Accelerate Kentucky is part of the strategy that has come out from them doing their REAP homework. We use Kramer's theory of collective impact. Because with entrepreneurship, nobody's in charge. The government can't demand it. The universities can't do it alone. The large corporations certainly can't do it alone. We take this collective impact approach and take our people through all of these different steps. And today's event is about bringing together the widest stakeholder ecosystem. And the fact that you've turned up from across the Commonwealth of Kentucky shows that you care about this place. And that's going to be one of the differentiators. We came out of a recession about 10 years ago from the global financial crisis. American mortgages seemed to go wrong. The recovery from that economic recession, was very uneven. There were places, perfectly good places and perfectly good people, through no fault of their own, got left behind. It happened in my country. It happened in coal country in the north of England. I understand it's happened to coal country in this Commonwealth and in this country. We have another opportunity as we come out of the COVID-induced lockdowns to look at the recovery that we want in the 2020s. How do we make sure that people aren't left behind again? Because we see the consequences of that. There are economic consequences. The places that are left behind, including in the state of Massachusetts, you can tell the places that are getting left behind. There's fewer opportunities. There's greater deaths of despair. The opioid epidemic tracks negatively to areas of good at innovation. It really matters to your communities to be good at this innovation thing. So we have an opportunity to actually rebuild better coming out of this particular lockdown. And the members of your REAP team have done an awful lot of work on this to know actually how to take this through. How do you get that high-end, innovation-driven entrepreneurship going through an ecosystem approach? And it's going to require the support of all of you and all of your organizations and all of your communities around the Commonwealth to make this difference. And as Kentucky does that, it then becomes part of our MIT portfolio. I think later today you're going to hear from a team that graduated earlier from Nova Scotia, Canada, which, though an Atlantic place, actually had very similar challenges. Very similar challenges about how do you get the good innovation out of just like the cities to the other communities around there. And so it's really important that we teach about Nova Scotia, but now as the faculty for MIT, I am thrilled that Kentucky becomes one of our case studies, that we can talk to people about what Kentucky did, how the team came together, how it's delivering on its Accelerate Kentucky strategy, and how it's taking things forwards. And another term you're going to hear is the must-win battle. Okay, the professors chose that before I turned up. I'm a diplomat. I might have chosen something else, but they've gone for it. At least the imagery now we have is of climbing a mountain. He's like, when you bind yourselves together as a multi-stakeholder group and decided to tackle a particular challenge, you can do it. One of the things we insist in the 2-year REAP program is that in the second year, after all the analysis and strategizing and learning in the first years, you do something. And that is your must-win battle. It's a must-win battle that every one of the stakeholder groups can rally to, that they will literally bind themselves together to assault that particular mountain, but it's only the first step. There's a much longer strategy. But if we were just producing a strategy, that wouldn't be enough. Our motto is mens et manus, mind and hand. We believe you actually need to do things. And that must-win battle is just the first step. And so it's great, with great pride, that we at MIT have seen REAP Team Kentucky deliver on its first must-win battle. The stakeholders have stuck together. We were at a steakhouse last night, and it was great to see the different stakeholders of the team sharing this vision. And I'm so excited for the program that they have for you today, so you can hear how they've done it and hear about the next steps. The must-win battle is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need to be taking the next steps, and they need to be taking that with the rest of the stakeholders. And I'm honored to be here. It is great to see VJ, Allison, and Rusty up there, having got to know them. And I think, Allison, I saw you arrive, but I didn't get to say hello to you. There you are. I'll come and say hello to you when I finished up here. It is great to see them having been like newbie members of the team when they first came to Workshop 1, and we just like fire hosed them with information about the MIT model. To see the way they've worked systematically through the homework and the 4 action phases, and have now appeared on the other side and are pulling things together through Accelerate Kentucky really is going to be one of the case studies that we want to teach to the global REAP program about your Kentucky. So with that, that's the end of my remarks. I am here during the day. I'm going to be listening to people, but hopefully also chatting in the margins, and then I'll do some concluding remarks at the end of the day. But I am delighted to be here, delighted to get to hear from you, and then I will take questions both during the day and then in this afternoon session.